Well, it's 5:30, so we're gonna get going. We got a couple folks that need to duck out early, so we're gonna try to keep it to an hour. We've been doing a pretty good job of it, so we'll try to do that today. But I also don't want to stifle any creativity in the discussion, so if we go a little bit longer, we're going strong, we might continue going a little bit longer than an hour. So I'll call the meeting officially to order. Is there any changes to the minutes? Have you been able to review those?
I'll move for approval.
Thank you. Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We have a pretty full agenda, but it's all kind of about the same thing. The next item is discussion by the members of our task force of projects reviews and board over the next 5 to 10 years. We've got our whiteboard already filled out, so with the objective to keep Edmond on the map. So would anybody like to start off the discussion? We had some great information was shared about Norman. There's been some information publicly about some of the stuff that Oklahoma City is proposing. And then we have our list of wants and needs in Edmond, and then we've talked about things here. We've had some wonderful presentations. Anyone want to start us off with what they've been thinking about these last few weeks?
I'd like to talk about what the other cities are doing a little bit, and looking at what Norman Forward's committee has chosen to do shows that they're taking really bold steps. And I think it's very important for Edmond to take really bold steps as well, and to come up with some ideas that really push the bar on what we want to do, and also look at doing this tax for a longer period of time, and maybe increasing the tax as Norman has increased their tax to 8.75%. It gives us a little bit of room to maybe produce some additional revenue through an additional tax. I know that we've all voted to renew the tax as it is, but maybe if we could revisit looking at having a longer tax or a larger tax as a secondary option.
And are you thinking of this as a pay-as-you-go, or are you thinking about using this tax as a debt service type of?
Well, Norman
option?
has used it as a pay-as-you-go and as a debt service mechanism.
Well, they gave themselves the option.
Right, exactly. And I hate for us to tie our hands as well.
I don't think we're tying our hands. I mean, the wording of it's all in the wording of the ballot language, and whether our hands are tied or not. And it's really not our hands we're tying, it's city council's hands. So, but I agree with you. I think while we can't dictate the verbiage, I think we should advise them or recommend to them that the ballot language contains something to effect that can be used for PAYGO, and I'm just, not wordsmithing at all, just PAYGO or debt service. And I think that they would understand that. And they're probably considering that as we speak. I mean, it's probably something that they've already got on their minds. But I had mentioned to Bill, and I've been thinking about this a lot, on the next item, which kind of ties into what we're already talking about, is this discussion consideration of prioritization of capital. I'd like to get away from using the word prioritize and priority. I mean, if we submit a list, the order that we submit the list in.
And I believe that what we're trying to do is to get to a list. So it's
Right.
more of this group being able to prioritize what's important to us and
Right.
important enough to be able to propose, not necessarily saying what it is.
Right, but I think we should not put in our recommendation that this is a prioritized list or these are our priorities. I really think we should avoid that. I mean, if we want to, agree on these are our top 5, top 6 ones, then they should be the top 5, top 6 ones, but I don't think we should.
And I believe that's the intention of kind of getting
Right,
there.
I mean, I
since,
just, I've
we
been thinking
filled up
about that
about
quite a bit, yeah.
20 things last time we were going through.
And going back to the Norman ballot, I mean, I think when you read it, it appears to me that they really kind of painted themselves in a corner. Because if it is approved the way it's written, they're going to have to do all that other stuff before they do anything else.
But that's kind of, that's the way ballot measures work. People want to know what they're voting for.
I understand, but the original 2000 CIP tax was not, I mean, the ballot language on it doesn't read that way. I don't know how many of you have read that.
Right, it was more
Doesn't-
general.
It was more general, but it did include a list of items that were put forward. Now, everything on that list has been done, and then some. But the city council, the city wasn't put in a box that we're gonna have to do all of these things before we do anything else.
And please others interject.
Yeah, please do. I mean, I'm just speaking my opinion.
And the tax we're looking at was specifically
It was
designated.
specifically for one specific item. I agree.
It's
But it
something-
also said, and any additional items that can be funded through, there was an out in there to where if there's anything over, they can use it for other things.
So maybe that's where the discussion
Am I right?
starts.
You're right, yes.
I'm looking at Mr. Murdoch because he's back there grinning.
And
I don't mind us leaving it in other items, but I'd like us to reconsider being bolder again and looking at, if for some reason we kind of send only 5 years, we've pretty much limited to a very small amount of money. But if we look at 10 or even going to the 15, we could do some of these pretty major things that would be quite a splash. Everybody seemed to like the Performing Arts Center, but we can't do that in a 5-year period. That isn't going to happen if we, and so if that's an important thing that we recommend, that's probably not going to happen.
in some of our initial discussions, I think there was generally a majority that talked about that it would be, if we're going to extend a tax, to have something that it's affiliated with, that we believe that that would work best for the voters, but also getting some of us on board with extending the tax and to have a sense of having something we think is purposeful, even though we trust our government to do right with the money, having something that is really a driver and catalyst for more. So,
I agree with you. I don't think 5 years is long enough.
Max?
Yeah, I passed this out, and I didn't mean to, get too detailed in the weeds, but I've been bothered by, we're going to extend this tax, and then by all the different people who've come and talked to us, we've got commitments for things like Covell and other things. So what I did on this, and this is just for me to kind of get my head around, I thought you guys might appreciate it. On the front page is, with all the colors in the graph, that is 5 years worth of tax extension. And you can look at this later, but basically the red lines are if we extend the tax, that's the amount of cumulative we'll have is the tall one, the amount available during the year is the sort of flat red one, and then the wiggly red one down at the bottom is how much we would have reserves at the end of each one of those years. So this actually tells you how many millions of dollars we'd have if we extended the tax. And then the blue lines were if we didn't extend the tax. And that one light colored line is the line of currently planned capital expenditures based on the 15-16 budget. So what I did, what that means is that at the end of year 5, we'd have, if we continued with extension, just before this break here, it says we'd have $40 million with the extension that were free, that hadn't been spoken for, between paying off other debt and capital improvements that we've already committed to do. So that would be free capital improvement for, if you flip it over on the back, this is the list augmented by the performance deal at UCO. And when you look on like the 1/3 from the end right here, these priorities are mine and mine alone. And I'm not trying to tell you all what to think. I just said, well, this is the way I would look at it. I sorted those by priority and by cost. So I did the highest priority, lowest cost item first. So what this tells you is that if we have $40 million in my priorities, we would get down to about halfway through roads and signals. And once again, these are just my priorities. But this gives you an idea about how much money we would have if we extended it. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, we have $189 million worth of ideas.
Where are you saying you would get through roads and signals? Show me.
Yeah, okay.
Number
So
16.
if you look at cumulative total, third column from the right, If we did my priorities in
Oh, I
this
see.
order, that's how much
Okay.
money we would have spent.
Okay, I see.
And
He's not
so,
saying just roads and signals, it's just, that's where it ends.
yeah, we would get
Yeah.
all the way through to that. You know, we would start out by baffling for the cops at the firearms range so that they didn't wake people up in the middle of the night with a barrage.
And the 42 million mark is without us doing anything? This would be without the extension? How much is it?
That is with the extension. Without the extension, you'd have to go to
Gotcha.
cumulative without, and that would be 9,900,000, so it's 10 million bucks, which wouldn't get us very far without the
Mark,
extension.
This is a lot of work.
Yes.
This is terrific.
Thanks. Well, and I can send people the spreadsheet if you want to reprioritize and stuff like that, but you got to be a spreadsheet geek, and nobody else
I
but
think
me
your
does
estimate on the
that.
performing arts is a
I would
little
geek out on
that. By about 100%.
Well, and I love that you confirmed it with the city, even like,
Yeah, I sent it to Ross, who was great. He sent it right back and said, change your inflation rates for the first year and the out
This
years.
is impressive.
Yeah, this is a lot of work.
But, and I'm not trying to, tell anybody what to think, but this helped me get my head around it.
but this is also without any debt. I mean, this would be if we're paying as you go.
This is pay go, yeah.
Right.
What you have available.
But if you have debt, you're going to have an income stream against that. So we'd have to have like a permanent, I think. I
So
don't
the
know.
debt would only be able to be 40 million.
It would only be able to be 5
If you're
years
just doing the
long.
5-year deal.
Right.
As long as the tax runs.
Right.
Goes on stack.
Is that right, David? They won't give you money unless you have a tax to back it up?
It's the cash flow.
Right, that's what I figured.
Would you send this though so we can all kind of jiggle it around for
Sure.
ourselves too?
Absolutely.
Yeah, does you have to send it through Andy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Well,
It's on.
they can't.
What I did Jill earlier was something very similar.
Oh, good.
Yes.
It's a little simpler,
It's done
but
with a
it does
pencil.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Because if you take the
It's
budget
old school.
versus what the income would be,
Yes.
that 40 million is over 5 years, but the first year, you've only got an extra million.
Right.
So, from that standpoint, you got to be very careful if you do 5 years with what you're going to put in it and be able to accomplish, without borrowing more money. If you want to borrow more money, then yes, you can do most. I don't particularly like the idea of borrowing money.
I love pay-as-you-go.
Because if you do 10 years, at the end of 10 years, you're basically going to have in capital improvements over $30 million a year with the projected, minimal projected. How much? Hopefully then, they grow and that's more, but every year, that's a safety center.
It's not 30 million a year, is it?
Pardon?
30 million a year?
Every year. That's with the current, already approved capital, plus the extra 0.5%. Yeah. 30 million? 30 million a year?
That's extending the public safety center and then.
Yeah, well,
He's
that's
right. If
extending
you look
the 0.5
at,
cent.
if you look at year
Right.
10,
Yeah.
right here, after 2 down after fiscal year, it says 30 million. So at least we're either both wrong together or,
No, you're right, but as far as, you're right, we should do pay-as-you-go first, but if there's a time to borrow, it's now before they raise the rates.
Oh, I agree.
If we can lock in a 10, 15-year note now, we should do it.
Steve?
Well, if you've got to plan what you're going to do with it, I mean, and for example, I like the idea of the performing arts, but you're not going to get or have money to spend and accomplish it in a very short period of time. And one thing we've never really talked about is, are we in favor of the city, which I think they need to do, is taking this building and the one next door and building a new building with some either dead space in it for expansion, an extra floor or whatever it takes. But it's got to be decided in where it's going to go, and if you're going to plan the Performing Arts Center, you got to do it all together if you're going to keep it downtown. And you can't do it overnight, and so I think the things, you got to go with 10 years, because this proves you can't get a whole lot done significant that the population is going to see a result of. The fire stations, yeah.
Is there a time period, how fast the bond money has to be spent? If we do it, does it have to be spent? What's the
Well,
time?
you have, again, we'd have to keep track, there's this thing called arbitrage, we can't invest it for greater than what we pay interest on. But they generally like you to spend it within a few years of getting the bonds. Now, you can go longer than that, but it's better not to do that, just for reporting purposes.
Okay.
Is there a threshold level of anticipated tax revenues necessary to get to a bond?
Well, we have to have coverage of what they call 25%.
25%, okay.
What was the total amount for the Norman investment that they were talking about doing? It was an extraordinary number.
148 million, I think it was.
Yes, I mean,
So they're going to spend a lot more than us, and they're a
Yeah.
community much smaller than us. And their population, well, it's not as good as ours.
and is it funded by a half cent as well?
Over 15 years.
Or-
15-year
Right, but
program.
you're still not getting to those types of numbers.
Well, if you figure inflation on ours over another 10-year period, it may get there.
If you look down the same year 10 column towards the bottom, you'll see if we,
Oh, the cumulative number.
if we extended it, we would have a total of $201 million.
Okay, gotcha, yeah, that's a good one. That's great.
So we would be keeping up with the Normans.
Keeping up with the Jetsons.
Yes, which is
And-
what we
and
need
I
to
don't-
do.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know that that needs to be the goal if we don't have
Yes.
the things to do. But, I mean, my thought process is we put together a list of 5 or 6 highly recommended projects. And then on the fire department, the police department, the roads, we recommend either a certain percentage goes to these groups or a dollar number, and then they determine how to spend it instead of us prioritizing, you know, $1 million goes to this particular center and $1 million goes to this fire station. We just give them some sort of percent or dollar amount to
I
be
think-
spent on capital needs only as they see fit.
I think Norman worded it that way, actually.
That's a good idea.
70% and then 30%.
But David, you know probably as well as anybody, because you've been on the council, there are so many funds. When I was trying to find the numbers to fill this out, I mean, the city has a lot of reserves and a lot of means. So, you know, like when it comes to roads and things like that, it seems like, and I'm really ignorant of how the city works, but it seems like they can find the money they need because they've been conservative. Is that not true,
Well, the
or?
problem you run into, though, is the percentage that police and fire get out of every dollar, no matter what it's earmarked.
But it seems like the police end up being supplemented by other funds in order to meet their payroll.
They have their own, each one has their own percentage of tax that they get 100% of.
Right, off of the
Right.
general fund tax.
Well, no, the 2000 tax had a percentage in there, and so it was like an eighth and a 3/8 or a quarter and
Okay.
3/8 or something like that.
Both fire and police get it?
They have their own
They have
dedicated
their own
tax.
dedicated,
Yeah.
and
I
then
knew
they get
police
a
did.
percentage of the general fund.
It seemed to me that the police department needed additional funds out of the general fund, and the fire department didn't, and Parks didn't. Is that-
So whatever they're getting, you're saying isn't enough to meet
Right,
operational
their
needs.
percentage of tax isn't enough for the police, but it seems to be for the other guys. But I'm, you know,
Can you repeat that list that you just went through, Mark, that you said need to supplement?
the police seem to need additional funds from the general fund.
Just to cover operating?
Correct. To cover their current operations, whatever that means. And one thing that, you know, you brought up stuff about roads, and of course, everybody in Edmond, you know, they talk about how great we are, the schools and all that, but they really want their roads in good shape. And so I don't really have a good feeling for, you know, I think we spend $900,000 for normal maintenance on the roads, and then another $2 million for, you know, making them bigger. And so I don't know how all the road stuff works and how good a shape that is long
Well,
term.
eight years ago, when we did the transportation plan, which is a 30-year transportation plan, it was roughly $343 million. That was 8 years.
So that was over a period of time.
That was in 2007 money,
And how long was that spent out over?
over 30 years.
Okay, so it's about 10 million a year for roads.
Well, you say that, but if you look at the transportation plan, the cost of the acquisition of the right-of-ways has gone up, the cost of the acquisition.
Right.
All that's gone up, so 343 million is probably closer to 500 million.
Is that
And
funded?
that's just the 30-year plan.
And
That doesn't go
I
past-
assume that doesn't include the matching fund, the federal funds or other things that they get to
That's a wild.
add on that.
No, it doesn't.
Well, and to reduce long-term maintenance costs, building all the roads out of concrete would really lengthen the life of the roads, reduce potholes, reduce maintenance costs over the life of the road.
So maybe,
Speak to that.
maybe we can get back to kind of the agenda on, because I think this is a really valid discussion that we need to talk about how much money and how far do we want to go. Right now, we approved the 5 to 10 extension of the tax. And maybe we get back to what are the things that are really important to us. We listen to the Performing Arts Center, the library, other things. What are the standout items that you feel are a priority, not necessarily for the council, but for this task force?
Well, I've got 3 items.
Okay?
And I felt like I could come up with 20, but I just felt like 3 was probably the limit to say these are my 3 top deals. The first one is the transportation plan.
The what?
Transportation plan. The second one is the library, and the third one is public transportation.
What are you calling your transportation plan?
The transportation plan, the plan we have, the city has, it's sitting on a shelf. That part of it's being done and part of it's not. It's on the Dropbox. I think, the priorities on that, I couldn't tell you right now, because all that's kind of a moving target, but I'm sure they could.
When was that set? What was kind of the vintage of that plan? Was it something recently completed? Or is that-
2007.
Okay. Does there need?
But Mark, Steve Manick and Tom Minnick are still up on what we have done, what we haven't done. There's a lot of it in there that's based on expansion of major and minor arterials, interconnection on some of the streets that don't interconnect.
Are the Edmond transportation needs of 2007?
No, it's the Edmond Transportation Plan. It's on the Dropbox, and it's from 2007 through 2037 was the time frame. So it was based on population growth. It was based on new schools being added. It was based on all that's ups and downs in the economy. It was a very thorough plan.
Cody just looked it up, it's 167 pages.
145.
145, sorry.
Yeah, so if you could skip
And I-
through
and I-
that.
yeah, and I read through it.
After break.
Look at it in depth.
Actually, I believe the executive summary is about 10 pages.
Okay,
All
well,
right.
that's good to know.
And then again, like I said, the library, something to do with the public library, whether we expand the existing one, put it in a different location, I don't know. And then something that Mark is involved in, and I've been involved in for years and years, is public transportation.
So-
We need to donate, I think we need to figure out a way to funnel some money to public transportation.
Bill, what will keep us on the map? What are your top priorities?
The bold idea is the Performing Arts Center. The quickest way to double our money real quick and make an impact with the locals, I think, would be the tennis center that could be used with the schools. We double our money through the public school system. There are some potholes that are swelling up my car. But I would like to see some more work done, and I'm still learning what the city's going to be able to do to help the museum out. But there's some things over there that need help.
That's a short.
That's a short, hopefully that's a short-term thing, but as they dig into the basement, I'm afraid they're gonna find a lot of.
Well, and it sounded like that there's hopefully a plan of action with that. so
They're working on it. They're working on it.
We talked about that.
Right, right.
They're working on it. But that's really what I'd like to see push forward.
For me, number one, the Performing Arts Center with the downtown parking garage. Number two would be downtown master plan and parking garage. And number three kind of goes along with it, which is a centralized city office complex with magnificent city hall, taking all the city offices and putting them in one giant tower. Along with that, number four would be stormwater drainage for central Edmond watershed and any other areas that need it. Number five would be I-35 frontage roads.
Which ODOT, I think, is committed to fixing all of that.
They're studying it.
That's right.
They're going to want our skin in the game.
Yeah, they're gonna want us to put up some money for it, and we should. It's our frontage roads, and if we want to develop I-35 as a commercial corridor, we need to have a nice frontage road system so cars can access it. All roads in Edmond should be concrete going forward, not a single asphalt road should be put down. Other cities are going to this, and it's this, when you do the math over 20 years, over 30 years, it pays for itself. And number seven would be light rail transit system.
That's a lot of money, correct?
Yeah, that's a big one, I know, but
So how about you, Cody, like your top three?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't limit them, so.
Maybe we'll get all the transportation needs out
Yes.
before we get to this, leave this section of the table.
Yeah.
But well, as you can imagine, that's where a lot of my interests lie. Definitely with maybe some of the large major items in the transportation plan. Capacity addition, completing the Covell Parkway, for instance. Being able to have our major corridors without choke points, being able to handle the capacity that we currently can't. And then also, I feel pretty strongly about public transit, just becoming more progressive with that. Whether it be adding more city link service, expanded park and rides, or addition of new parks and rides. And then something to do with the railroad. And I pitched a few ideas when I submitted my
Yes.
initial projects to look at how do we keep traffic on 33rd and 15th moving when there's a train.
You're not talking about light rail, you're talking about the existing railroad crossings.
Correct.
Yes.
You have a grade separated at, you have an underpass at 2nd Street, and then you have one at Covell, but if you want to go south, you're out of luck.
Right.
And I'm one of the west side of the tracks, Edmond people, and I actually had a conversation with some friends last night, and we were talking about their east side people, and I'm on the wrong side of the tracks.
Wrong
But
side of the
yeah, so I might just leave it as a solution. I don't want to box ourselves into what that is. And then also, along with that, considering whether we can get a quiet zone.
Yes.
A lot of it revolves around how do we address the situation with the railroad. And
As long as you've got grade crossings, you're not going to get your quiet zone, just so you know. This is
But Oklahoma City did it.
not with an at-grade crossing, they did not.
Really?
They had to
No,
close a
sir.
bunch
Do you
of
still whistle there?
Yes, sir, they have to.
They have to. Safety issues. That's
Federal law.
That's the federal mandate.
well, I'll let you guess what my solutions were then for 15th and 33rd. Doubt you want to hear the dollar figures on that, I'm sure. I have no idea.
Go ahead and tell us.
And then,
Well,
Right on Covell.
Covell was
Tens of millions,
19
so.
million.
Yes.
Covell was 19 million where we did that.
40 million for that.
yeah, and the right-of-way, I mean, would be astronomical to buy for those intersections. And also an additional city library, something else that I feel very, very beneficial for the community.
How about you, Mark?
Well, you've got mine, but just thinking about it, since I feel kind of this is cool, this is like a pop quiz. I like the downtown plan. I like the,
Wrong answer.
gosh.
That's a good choice.
Library, okay, downtown plan, because there are so many moving parts. And I'm not, that doesn't mean I include a performing arts deal. If it's in there, that's great, but I think to look at a downtown plan and get it integrated is really important. I love the library idea, whether it's at Mitch or downtown. And then I'd like to integrate the trails throughout the city so that it becomes a better walking city. I mean, there are places where there are just dead-end streets that go into stockade fences. We should be able to have some kind of...
That's not the trails.
Well, it is in an extended sense, because I think our neighborhoods need to be walkable. And right now, they're not. They're designed for cars. If you want to walk your baby into the next neighborhood where your friend lives, you've got to throw it over a fence. So, and it does make them tougher, but,
That explains a lot.
yeah. So integrated trails, and then the last one I think it's really important to have good school circulation. We're fighting it at Edmond North. Our new schools, we should just hit ourselves with a tack hammer if we put the same situation in on the new schools, so.
Yes.
Those are my 4.
Thanks, Mark. How about you, Betsy?
Well, Performing Arts Center, I think, I'm thinking about our entire community would be voting on this. And so I think we talked about the marketing that would have to be done to get the community to pass this. So I'm trying to think of what everybody would buy into. I'm thinking the Performing Arts Center, but to me that goes hand in hand with the downtown parking. So I'm considering that one. I also am concerned that we don't have a fire station on the other side of I-35, or we don't have one in the south side of the city on the other side of the tracks. That really stood out to me, that those 2 areas are beyond the 3-minute area. So that one, and a library.
David?
Well, I'm going to classify all of mine as one thing. I'm going to call it infrastructure. I haven't seen the 2007 transportation plan, but thank you, David. I'm going to go out and look at it. Did anybody else drive on the city streets this morning?
Drive?
Or, just I realize it's first day of school.
UCO.
We've outgrown what anybody could have planned for this city 50 or 75 years ago, and that's great. But I'd like to see more of our city streets look like Kelly between Danforth and Coffee Creek and Covell. Like Karash, I'd like to see every street concrete. I realize it's infinitely more expensive, but I'm sure in the long run it would pay for itself if we could figure out how to do that. But we're becoming a big city, but we're still built like a small town. And I'm thinking, if you're going to build a house, you're going to build a commercial building, whatever you do, you have to have good foundation and infrastructure to go from there. So I don't think we're there yet. And so I'm going to call mine infrastructure. That could include whatever the city needs in the way of, maybe we need another fire station. We do. But I would recommend that we recommend to the city council that, here's our bucket. You guys tell us where it best needs to go.
Dina, your top 3?
Performing Arts Center, and whether it's rolled up with the parking garage, I think if you're going to plan it, just put it all there together. Parks and trails, and then I'm going to lump in the animal shelter that rolls in with the police, everything. That you're going to parks and trails, you're going to go to Arcadia, they need a lake shack. All of that is in their baffling system. Since I can throw a rock at the and hit the gun range myself.
And they can fire back.
Yeah, don't throw it.
Golf club would be good.
Yeah, baffling would be nice, but, and then my 3rd would be the library. But echo what you guys are saying is, I want to do the whole list. I mean, and we added the last thing, and it's like $250 million. Go Boulder, go home. I know it's crazy, but 1 cent for 10 years would be awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know if we would get it, but,
400 million.
but that would get us where we want to go.
Could only recommend it.
But, I mean, those are just the top 3, but I want to do them all, so.
Thanks, Dina. Bob?
A little more practical. The fire station move, the new fire station number 6. Those are, I mean, I'm looking at this from what you can sell to people. Those are practical, and the one fire station can go quickly. They already have the land, so you can start and develop it and show success. Of course, you know my feelings on roads, which should be maintain what you got, and I think you have to, there should be an emphasis on the Covell corridor, clear to what would be serving the new high school before you get it built. And then the things for police, which includes the animal shelter. I mean, that's something else that can be done, show people. And go ahead and pursue the things, because you don't have a definite amount of money on a performing arts center, what it's going to take. You don't have it on the tennis with the school. I mean, all those things are planned. The library, you can say you're going to pursue them, but I don't think you can say we're going to complete it. No, that's the practical approach.
Same.
Well, to kind of go back to what I said earlier and to agree with Mitzi, thinking about, you know, what are people going to vote for, I think we need some excitement to do it. And the only, I mean, what's been most exciting to me is UCO's performing arts. Now, they are, as Bob mentioned, they're not as far along as I had hoped, but I think that can really draw some excitement. You know, I like the idea of the offices and putting all of the city offices together and making, again, you know, getting some excitement together. So probably those two, and then my third would be the tennis facility that helps with the schools and the partnership. But I still think we should not tell the fire department that we want them to build this facility, that we should say the fire department gets 20 million or 15 million, the Parks and Recreation gets, you know, because if you limit it to that one fire center, sure, the people around that are going to vote for it, but the people up north or wherever the other aren't going to care. But just in general, you care about fire departments, you care about police departments. So I don't think we should get that specific, except for to have 3 or 4 big items that will get some excitement.
Ann?
I've kind of grouped mine. I have a group that I think would be appealing and bring people into the city. I like the tennis facility because that brings in tournaments. There's some baseball fields, the performing arts. That, to me, is kind of blingy and would be attractive. Then I have a middle group that is quality of life, you know, like the library and some of those things. And then I have the things that we have to do, like roads and all. If we did all roads and things like that, I'm never going to vote against one, but I certainly wouldn't get out and rah-rah and try to get people to do it. I think the others, you'd have to work. We'd have to sell it and get people excited about it, but I think they could be excited about one of those facilities or things.
Thank you. Pete?
I believe that we, to the point where the arts center, performing arts center is important to bring people to downtown or into the Edmond area. Along with that, you don't want them to walk forever to get to the Performing Arts Center, so a parking garage would be wonderful there. I think also in downtown, our street lighting is in need of improvement, for sure. There's the trees that we planted on streetscape is wonderful, but it's overshadowed the prism lights that are down there, and it's kind of dark when you're driving through town at night, when the leaves are on the trees. And I think we could put street lights up a little higher to get the light, illuminate the streets. Obviously, the fire department, they've purchased the property on Covell, north of Sorghum Mill Road, and they've purchased property on 15th Street, just east of Kelly. They've got some good locations there. They want to move the one fire department from Broadway over to the one on 15th Street, and it would be a new fire station. It'd be going up to Kelly and north of Sorghum Mill. We do have the one fire station on the east side of I-35, and we've got the other fire station on I-35, just, I believe it's just south of 15th Street. So,
Pete, they've got the land you're talking about on 15th.
I'm sorry?
They've got the land you're talking about on 15th west of Kelly. They've got the land north.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
They have the land that you're talking about on 15th, that's west of Kelly.
Yes.
They've got the land on the north side, or north of Cross Timber.
Crossing School.
And they've also got the land out, is it Post? Post Road?
Yeah, I can't remember which cross street,
But it's out there, like,
the-
in the Danforth or something like that?
with that development you're talking
Yeah.
about.
I didn't know.
Iron Horse or something like that.
No, I don't, when does the 1 cent sales tax that was put together in 2000, when does that expire?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It's permanent.
Forever.
It's .75, I believe.
2000 CIP,
Yeah.
expiration? There isn't one, is there?
No, it's
there's
permanent.
continuing tax.
It's permanent.
And I think it's
So, let me ask Steve back here, what does a half-cent sales tax bring in per year right now?
That's 8 million.
Eight?
8 million a year.
So if you did a 1 cent sales tax, it would be 16. Yeah, so those are the priorities I've got.
I like the idea of the percentages, and I think we just need to say roads as the fourth one. And so, with that in mind, my top three that don't fall in those categories, that get the votes, as kind of as everyone's been saying, are, I think, the Performing Arts Center, realizing that to do that, we're probably going to have to consolidate all the city offices. So I'm not going to list that as a second one. And then I think the tennis center is another great idea. And, I think the trails, the multi-purpose trails, just kind of that overall theme of walkability and connecting, and I think that's another great one that people will latch onto and get excited about finishing. We got this great trails plan, but no one knows when you're ever going to be able to get there. So kind of putting the bow on that.
Thanks, Jill.
What I like about living in Edmond is that it's a small town. If I wanted a big city, I wouldn't be here. So the projects that interested me were the ones that kept the small town feel. So the Parks and Rec, walking trails, things, the downtown plan, people pulled toward that. And tennis players, so I'd like to make that number 3, but I work at OU and deal with all our new employees, and I can't tell you how many say loved Edmond but would never live there because of traffic. So I'd love to see that addressed, however.
Frank?
Well, I think kind of going back with that, I mean, the number one complaint that I hear out there from people that have lived here and people that have come here is you can't get from here to there. And so it's, obviously it's traffic and transportation, whether that's the transportation plan, that kind of includes road expansions and maintenance. And I like the concrete idea for the long term. Second one would be kind of a broad downtown expansion. That could include all the things we've talked about, whether it's city offices, what we're going to do with performing arts and all that. But if you look around at some bigger cities who have gotten bigger with that, they do it through kind of their downtown growing, offering more amenities, offering a variety of things to the citizens, but then also in doing that, it could incorporate the generation of additional revenues, whether that's through businesses coming in, additional sales tax, and so on. And then the third would be really broad, anything that is that helps us to generate additional income, additional sales tax, whether that's something like the tennis center, expansions of golf courses, maybe most importantly, just from what I do, is any assistance that can be given to development that would bring in income-generating businesses, both in our existing areas, but mainly, which seems to be almost impossible, if we could address that east of I-35, where about 50% of our land is. I know that's a big number and a big plan, but anything that we can do to address that is a combination of adding to the amenities of our city and at the same time help us to generate some additional revenues to pay for the things that we really need.
And Tim?
I like the idea, synergistic approach of trying to partnership, and I think the two main things that come to me are the tennis center, in that the school is willing to put up more than half the cost, plus once it's in place and we have additional source of revenues coming into the city. I think, to me, that's almost a no-brainer, and if we're not going to pay, if the biggest portion of the cost is going to be paid by someone else, and then the revenues will help pay for the rest of it, it looks like a great option, along with working with the Department of Transportation along the I-35 corridor, trying to put some skin in the game there to get some synergistic assistance there. If we're willing to put something along that corridor and get some help with the Department of Transportation, if we're willing to work with the school system and get some help with the school system, I think we can achieve a lot more than what we can on a one-on-one cost on some of these other projects, which I love, but they don't have the synergistic value that those two concepts do. And the third, to me, would be what Edmond really needs is certainly roads. We have road issues that need to be addressed for the long-term performance of the city.
Thank you. Now, my top three would be very similar. I think we're seeing a lot of consistency, although there is some additions, with little spices added here and there. But I love, again, the partnerships and creating some synergies, the Performing Arts Center, the library, the fact that they would operate that. And I'm not a tennis player, but see the value that could bring. And I think voters would be able to see what the success of what's happening at Mitch Park's YMCA, and that you could build off that to be able to create something special. I hear nonstop by Edmond residents as well as those that don't want to move here because of the traffic. And we say that the railroads are a problem that we're always going to have to deal with. I know it's so expensive to try and correct that issue, but it is a source of so much pain. The roads themselves coming into our city, our gateway, coming into Broadway, I think it's so sad. I get to drive down Kelly between Covell and Coffee Creek. It's like this beautiful oasis of road, and then you drive down Broadway and it's just, the lighting is out of date. It's sad. And so I think if there was a way, as part of a road or transportation project beyond and even downtown, to try to create a gateway to our city that is reflective of how grand Edmond is, and keeping it that small town feel, but making it where it's quality throughout. I also, I really love thinking about some type of economic incentive for businesses to be in Edmond or to invest or improve your properties in Edmond. And a lot of the success that they've had in Oklahoma City have been being able to evade property taxes and creating economic incentives to attract businesses here. And I think that there's some way perhaps that we can work with EDA to be able to create something special, or some other entity. I know Janet talked about the biggest attraction to Edmond is our schools, and we lean on that so heavily. But I think we need to have some other tool in our toolkit to be able to grow, to bring businesses here. I do love that these partnerships, the Performing Arts Center, the library, those could be here in the city, the downtown center. I think it'll create a lot of the benefits to downtown that maybe the study is trying to offer. agree with Pete though, that raising those lights would be pretty cool, but I think you need to have a percentage of your fund that's kind of handling the parks and rec type of issues, the kind of aesthetics of the city, but the roads and the transportation more issue is just something that's just stifling for us. But I do think we'll need to have some of those sexy projects that have some synergies to really attract voters, mainly to the poll. I think that you would necessarily want to have people opposing roads, but I'm not sure you can get people out to vote for that. So hearing everything, it's a lot of, there's not that much discrepancy in what we're all wanting, but it's a lot of money in what we're saying are our highest priorities. And I'm wondering if we need to come back next time and really revisit, is the half-cent 5 to 10 year expansion really where we're coming out now after having all the information, and really maybe having a vote on that again, if that seems.
Extend it to 10 years?
Well, to just discuss and decide whether we're going to, do we want
Or
5,
increase it.
10,
Or even
15,
15.
half cent, a full cent? Revisit that to see, define, is it 5 or 10, which is where we have it at right now. So then that will help us get to what we feel like we can go with to the city council with.
I took notes on what everybody was saying. I'll type it all up in email.
And we have a video too.
I've got it ready.
Okay, well. that would
And
be
Jill,
great.
after we've kind of seen how much everything costs, maybe we are willing to go back and address the length of time or the amount, because we feel like it's really important to the city in the future to be able to do these things. So,
And I meant that too, because I'm not at all opposed to talking about increasing the time and increasing the amount.
And I
agree.
hate the thought of an additional tax or even extending this tax. So I want to be very thoughtful in that discussion. But, I think now we have greater context than maybe we did in the beginning discussions. Is there opposition to including that on the next agenda?
It's a
No,
great idea.
I think that, when did MAP start? 98? Oklahoma
first one?
City?
92.
92.
Yeah, 92.
And look, now they're thinking about their fourth one.
Right.
And with Norman, maybe the energy with everybody in the wide metro area is, let's spend some money and take care of Oklahoma.
And people want to be part of the strategy, it seems. And I think
I
both of those
agree.
cases really show what the strategy is, and there's a little bit more ownership.
That would help with our marketing. We could
Especially if
come up
Norman
with
passes.
really good, pardon me?
Especially if Norman passes, which I believe it
Right.
will.
It will.
With really good marketing buzzwords and things like that. And Anne, bless your heart.
I know, don't you?
What is our deadline in presenting, Andy, the final report? I know we had that on the agenda.
Yeah, it's November, right around Thanksgiving, November 23rd.
So we're still,
28th, yes. you got
we're still
We're
good.
doing okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, good. I saw that on the agenda and it stressed me out a little bit.
No, we're
So
fine.
we will table that if that's okay to till the next discussion to really kind of figure out how much money we are talking about and what some of the big projects seem to be. And
Well, I wrote down everything everybody said and put tick marks by the ones that were repeated. So I'll type
well, I
that out and
appreciate
send
that.
that out.
And I think, we did the email before and I wanted to go through
I'll
and
send
kind
it
of
to
get
Andy
everyone's
and Andy can send it.
participation.
Sure.
Because it helped me think about what's important to me, just hearing everyone and really providing the context.
But it's so frustrating because we didn't talk about Kicking Bird and we didn't talk about so many things that, Kicking Bird is golf and that's going to appeal to a lot of people. And there are certain other things here that are just going to draw someone in, and it's frustrating.
It is,
It's very frustrating.
That's why I think if we, have these specific ones, but then we give a certain amount to the parks,
I like
and
that,
then
Sarah.
they can decide what their priorities are.
I like that,
I
Sarah.
think that makes a lot of sense.
It does, absolutely.
Because, those wonderful people came here, the fire chief, Bob Ricks, the Craig Dishman from the Parks and Rec, they all came. Come here, help us, help us, help us. And they all had very legitimate requests.
But, when you talk about marketing to do this, and we all know in this room the importance of the fire and the police and everything, but I think to the general public, they are going to say, boy, the police have just gotten a whole
Well,
bunch.
that's true,
Why
too.
are they
Yes.
wanting more? We all get it. But that would, to me, maybe be a hard one to sell because people think they've gotten a lot.
Right.
And they've got the sales tax that they get a percent of now. So I think that we've got to be careful on those things to balance that they're seeing the things that they think are.
And they're kind of a victim of their own success too, because
Yes.
we're a really safe community.
Yeah.
I don't think public safety is a hard sell. I really don't believe that.
But Mr. Ricks, and as I remember, he'd come,
Right.
he'd come for animal health, animal shelter.
Right.
The
Yes.
animal shelter.
That's an easy sell.
Yeah, everyone loves dogs.
Couple
We'll
of
get that
dogs.
done.
That's not expensive.
Yeah.
That's an easy sell.
Well,
Couple of sad
that's-
rescues,
that's
and you got it.
included in the
Several
public
things.
safety, as is the fire and the fire stations. You know, they can all, the fire stations, the animal shelter can all be listed under a public safety header as a, you know, it's all kinds of ways to attack that.
Yeah, a lot of it's how it's marketed and you.
Right.
But
But
you're
public
touching-
safety is never a hard sell.
You're touching on something that I think is the most central thing about this whole tax question, which is people have to feel like they're getting a value.
Yes.
You know, there's some places in the United States where you give a tax and some guy gets really rich and you never see a new road. That's not happening here, and people need to know that.
Well,
So-
and the oversights committee that MAP's had and that was in Norman's deal, we may want to.
We need to have that,
And I don't
too.
know if that's,
We have
that's
one.
probably not us to
Is that what the
discuss.
CIP is?
CIP committee is the oversight committee for 2000 sales tax.
So this one, we'd establish another
David and I are
one.
both on it.
And I really
Tim
like.
shows up most of the time.
Not anymore.
Oh, when did you stop going?
Christina's taken over.
Oh,
She showed up the
all
other
right.
day.
And the items that were discussed, to me this time, seemed, even though that, it didn't seem like there was a pet project anymore. Performing arts, I mean, I enjoy the arts, but I'm not a huge arts advocate. I don't have any original work in my household, just things like that.
Jill,
I know, I'm admitting
work that out for
it.
you.
But my kids, I know, I love you, Mitzi, and I normally wouldn't be the top thing at Performing Arts Center is what we need. But the fact that that's a catalyst for other things, economic activity in the areas surrounding that,
And the
is so
support GCO.
attractive. So those catalyst type of projects, I think we're all kind of talking about, I think resonate with everybody. So it's not just the fact that I love this, but I can see now the benefit to my city, and so.
Partnerships.
There's an economic reason to
Yes.
support this beyond just, we like the arts.
Yes, right. I guess that's what I should have said.
I agree.
I love the arts.
I agree, I think we need it, but I'm probably going to piss you off, Missy, but I don't think we need it to the tune of $80,000.
80 million.
$80 million. I don't think we need it to that tune. I mean,
No, only
what
three-
these guys were talking about doing is going to cost $80 million. And I just,
Well, and they have the state behind them if they can get that support. We don't know.
Right,
Yeah,
they have additional donors and things that could help match funds.
That's what Ann's going to be doing.
yeah, Ann's really choking on that.
I know. They have Ann Hosperline, they're fine.
Stay awake all night.
But Tim, would maybe the Edmond Public Schools be interested in being a part of that partnership as well? Because that Performing Arts Center could be used for Edmond Public School performances and.
You gotta figure out who's gonna run it.
Well, UCO will run it.
Nobody really wants to take charge of, the city does, Larry.
Well, UCO would love to run it. The music department guy said he would love
I
it.
think UCO is very willing to run it.
They're willing and they're
Yeah.
good at it too. They've been doing
I
the
think
Jazz
they're willing
Lab,
to do that.
fantastic job.
I don't think any kind of discussion has been held yet on total cost and how the breakdown is.
Yeah, I did put a cost in my list, which I assumed $300 a foot and 21,000 square feet.
I heard $300.
And David, I think their presentation was dream. I think reality changes a lot.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that one.
That's the way dreams are supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe they talked about what it could be, but what it realistically would be and still be a wonderful facility can be very different.
One of the gentlemen was talking about 1,500 seat Performing Arts Center, and we needed, 2 or 3 acres, so you're not gonna find that down there.
Well, and you're not going to fill a 1,500 seat.
I mean, one other thing.
You're going to have a tough time doing it on a consistent basis.
Well, on a consistent basis, maybe, but I think there is potential for the partnership with the school. You look at the fabulous orchestras we have in the high schools, and they have to
Marching
go,
bands.
they go to the Civic Center, and it's, completely filled to capacity. So I think that they're, I mean, I don't know.
We should be having the Edmond Public School performances in Edmond.
Yes, definitely.
Graduation.
Well, each of the
And
schools has,
graduation.
each of the schools has an auditorium.
Right.
Each of them have a facility. Yeah. They're all 1,000-seat auditoriums?
I don't know what the size are.
But they are nice.
Yeah, each of them has their own, I mean, not that they can't they'd love to have additional facilities, but there is a starting point for each school.
But then, like North Orchestra, though,
Right.
you go to downtown
They just
to
did-
watch them.
Not Edmond schools, but Deer Creek just redid theirs, and it's unbelievable.
So,
One of the things we missed
Performing
tonight,
arts
and
center,
I think that's important, one of the splash pad over at Barnett Field has got more excitement than any place I've ever seen.
I agree.
Yeah, it's
And
amazing.
That's a lot of bang for the buck.
We need to have more.
We need more splash pads.
You go to the swimming pool up here on Bryant, and you need to see Joe before you go up there to get a loan, if you take a family up there. And the splash pad doesn't cost anything, it's just the water, and they don't need,
I love the splash.
It is joy
Supervision.
too. I mean, you drive past it and you
It
can't
is.
even, you just are happy driving past it.
You can't help but smile.
You can't help it.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
And that was
I agree with
500,000.
that.
it brings emotion out. And the lower income
yes.
area over there in that side of town,
Perfect location.
they need more.
Yes.
Well,
They need more.
I see
They've
some
been
pretty high
starved for a long
income cars
time.
parked in that parking area.
Well, it's neutral, it just
Yeah,
kind of
it's-
neutralizes all of that, and it's just kids playing. and
It's
that's
kids out
what's
playing in the
so,
water, it's just,
yeah.
yeah.
well, and
you
it's
can't help but
community
smile.
too, and that's
Yeah,
really
that's what it's all
important.
about, yes.
You're right, Pete. You're
Yeah.
absolutely correct.
And it, just like. as
There's
Jill
other
was
parks
saying-
over there that we could put that splash pad in some of those other parks over there. And the splash pads don't run that much money. I mean, as much as I thought. I've heard all kinds of things, but I think it's less than $500,000.
And I love the fact that it's not like the biggest, baddest splash pad ever. It's just, it feels
Yeah.
like a small town kind of
Yeah.
amenity to have.
It gets
So
crowded.
It does. I mean, it doesn't look like you're in a small town.
I drive by it a lot. It
Yeah,
is.
me too.
Yeah.
I was over there one day, and there was a little boy in a wheelchair, buzzing all over there, screaming his head off, laughing. Everybody was helping him.
Isn't that neat?
And I'm telling you, to see that, as a grandmother of a special needs child, that was enormous.
Well, thank you.
That's one thing that I think as you said that, I'm looking, are we doing something that impacts every age?
Yeah. Yeah,
Like seniors
Yes.
and school age and children. I think that's something that's important for us to go back and kind of look if we've impacted, if we're doing something that will benefit every age group in the city.
And I think when we're talking about the library, to me, I really love the idea of combining that with a community type of center too, so we don't lose what this building is able to provide, and giving some opportunities for small businesses to be able to have a place to meet, and keeping that kind of going too. And I think the more that we can even think about some of these ideas and make them more multi-generational, the better off we're going to be. So really appreciate everyone's discussion. It was great to hear everybody's point of view, and really appreciate your openness today. So,
Is this phrase, keep Edmond on the map, is that trademarked or?
well, that's Bill is now.
I kind of like that.
You can pay him for the
Ties into
Yeah.
the map.
Yeah.
Somebody.
It even is a play on the maps kind of thing, and just, yeah.
I'm just a simple engineer from a small town, Oklahoma, but that's been running around in my head for 3 or 4 weeks now. And
We need an
keep,
acronym.
put, place, whatever verb you want, but
Well, you and Dina need to get, Dina's got a few jotted
An
down.
acronym for sure.
And we're an amazing
maps
city.
ready.
You
Yeah.
just don't ever want to put that at risk. And
Right.
I think some of these issues we've talked about, the transportation issue mainly, is really something that does put the city at
Everybody
risk.
gets challenged.
But thank you. We'll come back next time if I have a motion to adjourn and all that.
Move to adjourn. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Can I just make a statement? Jill, you are doing a wonderful job. I mean, you're just on top of everybody and keeping us. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you. It's fine. I love the arts.